Welcome to Merritt Street Media. Mushrooms, Molly, ecstasy, these drugs may hold the key to not just battling other mental health issues, but actually curing it.
Put a Beretta 9mm to my temple and I pulled the trigger.
A veteran who suffered from severe PTSD attempted suicide 5 times before finding MDA therapy.
It's kind of like a colonoscopy for the brain.
The reality is there are doctors who are going to abuse it.
Whatever it takes is what should be done. Thank you very much. Well, when you hear the words magic mushrooms, Molly, ecstasy, and MDMA, you probably think party drugs, bad trips, not therapy. But what if I told you that scientists say these drugs may hold the key to not just battling PTSD, depression, and other mental health issues, but actually curing it? Every day in this country, 17 veterans die by suicide. That's 510 servicemen and women dying every single month, and more than half of those suicides, 56%, are the result of PTSD. Now, researchers say new studies prove there is help to reduce those suicides, and the answer could lie in psychedelic drugs. The U.S. recently approved legislation that will fund clinical trials using these drug treatments on veterans and active duty military members. In California, Massachusetts, and Arizona are all working on passing similar laws for civilians with mental health issues. Take a look.
Psychedelic drugs to treat PTSD. Last night at 6, we introduced you to a local military veteran who says psychedelics have allowed him to get his life back.
He is among a growing number of vets using them to treat PTSD. But the idea does come with some controversy.
I say let the science and the medicine lead us here, and if there are safe therapies that are helping veterans and helping people, we should be making those available to folks.
An FDA panel voted against endorsing a well-known party drug to treat PTSD.
The decision against the use of MDMA came after a lengthy debate on the risks and benefits of the drug, also known as ecstasy or Molly.
Quote, VA is committed to safely exploring all avenues that promote the health of our nation's veterans.
It's not stolen valor for me to say that this is post-traumatic stress, and now I can go and I can treat it.
We're going to hear the amazing story of one veteran who says this treatment absolutely saved his life. But first, I'm joined by Congressman Dan Crenshaw. Now, he introduced the psychedelic clinical trial law that was passed as part of the National Defense Authorization Act of 2024. And I'm also joined by Dr. Jen Mitchell. She leads the Psychedelic Medicine Integrated Project Research Team. So thanks, both of you, for being here. I appreciate it. Congressman, you're a former United States Navy SEAL Lieutenant Commander, correct?
Correct.
I just have to take a minute to really say thank you for everything that you've done for this country, the sacrifice that you've made. Words aren't big enough to really express how much all of us appreciate what you've done and continue to do for America. What inspired you to propose this bill?
Appreciate you saying that. I will say all my PTSD comes from politics, not from the SEAL teams. So we hear the stats every day. Sometimes it's 22 veterans a day. Sometimes it's 20. Sometimes it's 17. Perhaps there's some improvement, but obviously not much. And it's a really difficult problem to solve because you can't get inside someone's head. And so we feel very helpless. And I'll just tell you the story of how this happened, maybe, because I've been trying to get this legislation done for about 3 years. And I'm having dinner with a friend of mine, and he was blown up really bad in Marja in Afghanistan. He was in a vehicle. It was a roadside bomb. So he has no physical wounds, but he had severe traumatic brain injuries. Couldn't speak for a while, memory loss, harming his marriage, harming his career, just harming him. And he starts to tell me about his journey through psychedelics, specifically with the drug Ibogaine in this clinic in Mexico. It is a one-day treatment, basically 12 hours of hell. And you wake up from that completely changed, and changed in a very good way, not wanting any more substances, whether that's drugs or alcohol, and just feeling like you've been completely reset. I thought, well, that was an interesting conversation. I've never even heard of this. And so we drive back to our apartment in DC, and I get in the elevator, and I'm accosted by this gentleman. He goes, Mr. Crenshaw, I know who you are. Just give me 5 seconds. I tried to commit suicide multiple times. This treatment saved my life. You need to know about it. And I was like, how am I hearing about this exact same crazy thing like twice in one night?
Yeah.
So it felt like that was a calling to actually do something about it. So the next step was simply looking at what's the proper next step, and legislatively speaking, to get this done. And we came up with a bill that's effectively instructs the DOD to use $10 million that we appropriated to them to do clinical trials according to FDA guidelines, which the FDA is currently writing, either through the DOD, Veterans Affairs, or other academic medical institutions.
Dr. Mitchell, how many veterans have you been involved with using these psychedelic substances to treat their PTSD, and with what result?
Well, I'd say it's about 15 to 20% of our study population. And the results so far have been very promising. About 70% of the people that have participated in the phase 3 trial lose their diagnosis of PTSD by the end.
And how much time is that?
About 4 months.
So are they downgraded to single anxiety diagnosis or depression or completely asymptomatic? What happens?
So far, they also seem to be losing their signs and symptoms of depression. So that's a very intriguing outcome.
Mm-hmm.
You can define PTSD in a number of different ways, and you can define recovery in a number of different ways. We've tried to set the bar in a variety of ways, and we've shown that no matter how you set the bar, there appears to be a remarkable improvement.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And what happens to the other 30%?
A lot of them get substantially better, but they don't lose their diagnosis of PTSD. Their PTSD symptoms are just reduced. And then there's a small subset of people that are non-responders. We'd really like to know why they're not responding to the power of psychedelics.
Is there a difference between PTSD and PTSD with TBI?
There is a difference. I mean, PTSD is interesting in that it's typically not a standalone diagnosis. It often occurs with anxiety and with depression and with TBIs and with alcohol and drug use disorders.
Mm-hmm. And do those with TBI respond? Are they in the 70%?
In a phase 3 trial, you have very strict inclusion and exclusion criteria, so you don't really cast as broad a net as we will cast when this drug is FDA approved.
Mm-hmm.
But so far, yes, they're still responders.
TBI, we're talking about traumatic brain injury that occurs with PTSD. Sometimes it's there, sometimes it's not, correct? So,
correct.
And to clarify, which drug are you talking about?
I'm talking specifically about MDMA right now because that is
right.
the only psychedelic that has crossed phase 3 trial threshold.
And I want to say that the VA has been doing these studies. You know, we instructed the DOD to do it and allow active duty service members to participate in it.
Mm-hmm.
But kudos to the VA. They've been putting out these studies, and it's pretty amazing. Another study came out of Stanford on Ibogaine recently, and again, it was back in the 80% range. They completely lost their diagnosis.
When we're talking about MDMA, we're talking about what on the street is known as ecstasy or Molly.
Yeah.
Right? So
correct.
We have a graphic of the trial results. The Multidisciplinary Association for Psychedelic Studies, also known as MAPS, conducted a clinical trial on MDMA-assisted therapy for PTSD. 67% of participants who received 3 therapy sessions no longer qualified for PTSD diagnosis. 88% experienced a reduction in symptoms. The trial group featured nearly 100 participants who suffered from PTSD, an average of 14 years. So this was a chronic population.
I think the only side effect is they have an obsession with electronic dance music after that.
Yeah. All right. So this truly is really encouraging. And this isn't just administering the drugs. It's coupled with talking therapy, right?
Correct. That's a very
cognitive behavioral therapy.
That's a very important component of the therapeutic process for sure. We're not handing people pills and waving goodbye and having them do this alone in their living room.
Yeah. All right. Coming up, we're going to hear from a veteran who participated in one of these trials, and he says it saved his life. We'll be right back.
When my unit, Bravo Battery, got to Iraq, first night we got bombed, it was terrifying. And slowly it becomes your new normal. I tried to kill myself the first time, Christmas morning, 2006, and I took my first dose of MDMA November 22nd, 2014. It's been 9.5 years since I've thought of taking my life, and that will never enter my life again.
John Lubecki served not in one, but two branches of the military, both the Army and the Marines, for 7 years. He suffered from severe PTSD and attempted suicide 5 times before finding MDMA therapy.
I joined the Marine Corps when I was 17. While I was deployed to Iraq, my base was bombed roughly 6,000 times. When you're bombed every single day, that's how PTSD can happen. My wife had left a couple of weeks earlier, cleaned out the house, sold my motorcycle, took my dog. Coming home initially was chaotic and confusing. It was Christmas, I was alone. I didn't want to live anymore. I was hearing artillery and helicopters when there were no helicopters and artillery. This constant pain and sadness was always there. And then I put a Beretta 9mm to my temple and I pulled the trigger. Manufacturing malfunction with the ammunition is the reason I'm alive. That was only my first attempt. There are 5 attempts that should have ended my life. During this time, I tried every different kind of therapy. I was on 42 pills a day, and none of it worked. I found out there was a clinical trial involving MDMA and psychotherapy, and I took my first dose of MDMA. One of the reasons that I made the decision to do MDMA-assisted therapy is because of my stepson, and I saw what my final suicide attempt and the impact it had on him. And after I did MDMA-assisted therapy, I knew for a fact that my son would not be handed the flag off my casket. I joined the military to help people, and I came home broken. MDMA-assisted therapy allowed me to heal. When I graduated from the Citadel, inside this ring, it says never stop serving. I've spent the last 9 years of my life knowing that this works and trying to get it to the 172 people I deployed with. And I'm willing to do anything and everything to make that happen because this works.
John, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me, sir.
You've battled PTSD for 8 years, correct?
Yes, and I'm one of the few people who's been able to say I've actually been healed of it longer than I had it.
You made serious suicide attempts. You put a gun to your head on Christmas Day of 2006. What happened?
Squib load. It was a manufacturing defect in the ammunition, which was actually interesting because there was still a pop. I actually thought it worked, but none of the pain went away. And I actually tried a second time with a different firearm and a spring broke.
When you put a gun to your head and pull the trigger and it doesn't work, not once, but twice, does it start to occur to you that you're not supposed to die?
Actually, my thoughts on it now versus then are very different. Back then, I thought I was such a failure, I couldn't even kill myself right.
And when you made these attempts, you had PTSD and you had some comorbid things going on.
So I would hear helicopters and I would hear gunfire and explosions that weren't there.
What led you to try this particular therapy?
In order to be released from the VA after being hospitalized for a suicide attempt, they say, what can we do to make sure this doesn't happen? And one of the things they said is I need, without fail, weekly therapy, at least just to keep me on this side of suicide. Just one week, I met with the intern. Intern slides this piece of paper across the desk and says, I'm not supposed to tell you about this, but read it after you leave. I opened it up. It said, Google MDMA PTSD. And I discovered clinical trial in Charleston. So I called them up and talked to them. I was fortunate they were able to expand the 25-person veteran and first responder study by 1 to include me. So I was the 26th person in a 25-person study.
Wow. No accidents there. You were taking a lot of medication before, right?
I was taking 42 pills a day for physical pain, TBI, PTSD. So as part of this, one of the hardest parts was I had to wean off of everything. And that is a very difficult time. You do have full support during that time. Doctors are involved and it's done in a proper way. You start with just regular talk therapy. And then You know, on the day of the big therapy, you know, they hook you up to like blood pressure cuffs and all this other stuff. The only thing I had done prior to that was cannabis. And so when it kicked in, I was like, oh, this is weird. And that's when the therapy started. And they started with simple things. You know, they start with kindergarten questions. You know, what's the food like? What's the weather like? You just start talking. And you're able to open up and talk about things that you've never talked about before. You don't have panic attacks. So the therapy works even better. It put the mind, body, and spirit in the place it needed to be so it can heal. That's exactly what MDMA does.
Which is why it's important to be part of a therapeutic paradigm. And
yeah, if you're not doing the therapy, you're just doing drugs.
Yeah. Coming up next, John's treatment was filmed, and he's allowing us to watch some of his sessions. We're going to take a look at that when we come back.
If you want to just relax, and if you happen to fall asleep before the medicine comes on, that's fine. Is that good?
Mm-hmm. What's weird is I kind of feel like the Matrix.
John credits MDMA therapy with saving his life. He has shared video of his sessions with us so we can see firsthand how it worked.
It's weird because, like, this past 4th of July, my neighborhood decided to set off massive amounts of fireworks to the point where my house was actually shaking. And I was more terrified than I ever was. I don't understand. I was in my closet, in body, physically shaking with my dog. And I couldn't, but that was never the case. I don't understand.
How many actual sessions did you do with the MDMA?
It was 3 sessions, roughly about a month apart.
Mm-hmm.
And then there was also talk therapy sessions in between each one.
And how many people were involved when you were on the MDA? There were 2 therapists there and you?
Correct. And also after the therapy, I was kept overnight. And there was a person who had therapist training in case I felt like talking overnight or anything like that. And then the next morning actually was the first integration session that I had.
Okay. And you say there was a decline between each session. It didn't just click off after the 3 times of using MD8. It went down after the first session.
As you know, when it comes to mental health, it's all about that individual person. For me, in part because I had extensive trauma from not just from Iraq. I thought I was going in to talk about Iraq, and I literally talked about all the trauma in my whole life, which was very unexpected. And so I noticed improvements after each one. I distinctly remember the first night I didn't have a nightmare. I don't know the first day I didn't think of killing myself. I do remember the first day I realized it.
Mm-hmm. When you were first hearing it, did you have an idea of the power of what was possibly available?
I mean, those are pretty shocking stories to hear. It started becoming clear to me that, wow, this might actually be that silver bullet for a few reasons. You know, just thinking of it from the unemotional policy perspective, it's not expensive and it doesn't take a lot of time. He said 3 sessions. I think that's the most I've heard. When you're talking about the Ibogaine therapy, that's one and done. And by the way, that is not recreational, so there's not that worry about it either. Our legislation names specific drugs: psilocybin, MDMA, DMT, 5-MeO, and Ibogaine. And I think what the most effective thing we've done is just taken the stigma off of psychedelics, help people understand that there's a use for this, that they were perhaps improperly stigmatized. They're saving lives in a way that nothing else I've seen on the mental health side.
Dr. Mitchell, this does impact some of the brain structures. It uses some of the same pathways that addictive drugs involve. Is there a downside to this?
To some degree, it does use those same pathways. It uses them rather differently. And so that's an important thing to keep in mind. And so one of the interesting things that it does is it seems to, as John was saying, it allows you to like retrieve a really emotionally laden memory without fear or shame, and then reprocess it in a way that releases some of that pain. So you're not forgetting anything, you're just reprocessing it in a different way.
And on the addiction question, you know, I took MDMA 3 times. 9.5 years ago. Haven't taken it since. You can polygraph me. And if I were to come down with PTSD again, I would have no issues going through the same therapy. MDMA is so closely tied to my trauma that wanting to do it recreationally just doesn't seem fun to me, honestly, because my experience with it has been discussing all the worst things in my life. So the idea of wanting to take it again is just kind of foreign to me.
Yeah, it doesn't pair up for a fun night. Yeah.
I mean, this is kind of like a colonoscopy for the brain, but...
That's going to be quoted.
Yeah.
It's going to be quoted a lot.
Yeah. Welcome to YouTube. All right, coming up, we're going to speak to another veteran who says he was desperate to feel better. He went to Mexico to try a controversial treatment. That's next. When you have PTSD, it's like you're in an altered state. Symptoms can be overwhelming. It's not the same for everyone. At its worst, it's like a panic attack that doesn't go away. It feels like you're falling off a roof of a skyscraper sometimes. Army veteran Derek Ross knows those symptoms. He developed severe PTSD after losing his leg in Afghanistan, and he's joining us now. Derek, thank you for being here. I really appreciate it. Tell us about your service and your experience that you believe caused your PTSD.
So I joined the Army back in 2006. I was an ammo specialist at first, did a Iraq tour as that job, and then came back, reclassed to combat engineer, went to Afghanistan, got blown up in August of 2011, and then I went through about 2.5 years of recovery. I want to say it was like 18, 19 surgeries, and I had my leg for a while. I kept getting massive infections, and fast forward a little bit of time, this Army vet approached me and was like, hey, you thinking about cutting that off? And I was like, excuse me, like what? And then he had told me that he had been hit by a landmine in Desert Storm, and went through the same thing I was going through, and talked to me for a few minutes, and that kind of sparked my interest in getting rid of my leg, because at that point I was essentially like professional hospital patient, just in and out of the hospital. It was really toxic, and I started isolating a lot.
And you went to Mexico looking for relief, right?
Yes, sir.
What led you there, and what did you do there?
I would say like divine intervention, the right time, the right place. The gym I trained at, one of the athletes met the founders, and they told him to sign up, and I was like, hey, can you throw my name in the hat? And he did, and thank God that they accepted me. And I basically asked that because, I'm currently like separated from my wife right now. Mm-hmm. And it's been a really hard year. I think as men, we try to power through our issues, and I just wasn't working out. And since going through that, the conversations now with my wife have dramatically improved. I mean, we're already planning on moving back in together. And
what did you do in Mexico?
I did Ibogaine and 5-MeO DMT.
How did that work for you?
Ibogaine sent me to space. I was up there. It was a long trip. You start at 8 p.m. And I think you're like tripping or on a journey for like 10 to 12 hours. Mm-hmm. It's a long process. And
did you have therapists there with you at the time?
A couple months before you even go, you're talking to a coach, building your intentions. So you're not just showing up and doing some Ibogaine. And so you're prepared before you go through the medicine. There's always a medical staff there.
And this is one of the things with these compounds. They're all different. So psilocybin's about 4 hours, MDMA 6 to 8 hours, Ibogaine's 12 hours. They all work differently. They all require different protocols. Ibogaine therapy, the integration you did, it's very hard to actually do talk therapy while you're under the influence of Ibogaine, as I'm sure you know.
Yeah.
MDMA is a little different. So they do the integration afterwards.
Yeah.
But the integration is always a really important part of the therapy, for sure.
The best way to describe to me was I would never wish this upon my worst enemies, but I would tell my best friends to do it. Is that about right?
It's pretty brutal. I puked probably like 200 times.
Yeah. Derek says it didn't fully work. He still has symptoms and now has been getting therapy from Freedom Horse Ranch in Weatherford, Texas. The founder and CEO, Danny Grego, is here. And now, Danny, your facility focuses on helping veterans with PTSD, right?
Yes, sir, it does.
You do equine therapy and really work with these people in a up-close, personal, hands-on way.
Well, the horse is a real special creature that the Lord put here, and it can pull things out of you that nothing else can do. And so, kind of like what they were saying with the Ibogaine and some of the other treatments that they have, we have an extremely high success rate. We've had soldiers share some of their most intimate details of what happened during their experiences.
I'm a huge fan of equine therapy, by the way. And you're also a country star, and your song Madison Motel is charting right under Beyonce on Billboard country music charts. And
True, yeah.
And you're donating proceeds of your music to veteran rehabilitation. Tell us about that.
Absolutely. I've got a song out there called 22, and we're donating all the proceeds of that to try to end this pandemic veteran suicide problem that we have, this vastly being overlooked in this country. And really, it's not 17 or 22. That's only the confirmed suicides.
Right,
the number is
exactly.
much higher and doesn't include any overdoses.
Yeah.
So I'm just trying to use my platform as an artist to help these veterans who've done everything for our country.
With all that you've worked with, what's your attitude about the psychedelics?
I think that the Lord has put a cure for every ailment that we have on this earth naturally. And so I would be for them trying whatever might work for them to get past what they've got.
My big point about this is everything that's done needs to be done under supervision as part of a therapeutic paradigm.
Absolutely.
So coming up, the widow of Navy SEAL Chris Kyle is here. She has dedicated her life to helping veterans to honor her husband's legacy. We'll add her to the conversation next.
My relationship with Chris was life-changing for sure. He was the kindest, most fun man. Chris was murdered with his friend Chad Littlefield. They were trying to help a service member. I've watched my husband suffer, my children suffer, and I've suffered too. Everything I do now is to try to help people heal from that devastating feeling of suffering and trauma.
American sniper Chris Kyle is considered the most decorated Navy SEAL sniper in the United States history. He was tragically murdered in 2013 by a mentally disturbed veteran he was trying to help. Chris served 4 tours in Iraq and was awarded some of the highest military medals, including the Bronze and Silver Star. He was also a loving father and husband.
I'm Taya Kyle. Usually people know me best through my husband, Chris Kyle, who is the American sniper. No matter what Chris did, he did it to the best of his ability. He was a phenomenal cowboy and then Navy SEAL. In 2013, a mother approached him and said that her son had PTSD. And Chris asked her if her son liked shooting. She said yes. She neglected to tell us that they removed all the guns from their home a few months prior because he had threatened to kill himself and his entire family. Chris took him out to a really peaceful range, and that person turned on him and killed Chris and his friend. What we found out in trial, the murderer did not have PTSD. He did have a history of smoking weed, and he got it on the streets, and he got it laced with other things. When Chris was killed, I had to start this foundation. I'm the executive director of TACF, Taya and Chris Kyle Foundation, which serves service members. I have a knee-jerk reaction when I hear that drugs that were once used recreationally might be used to treat PTSD. Anytime we're talking about treatment for PTS, you have to have somebody who's facilitating and knowledgeable. These are not things that you do by yourself. They can go horribly wrong. The person who killed my husband did use drugs. recreationally. So I need to get my head around the science and how it can be used effectively. I am passionate about people knowing that PTS or PTSD is not a life sentence. It's something that's difficult to work through, but it absolutely could be done.
Well, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it. You think that a lot of study needs to be done about these substances and care needs to be taken about all this, correct?
Oh, I do. And I'm honored to be here because this is a group of loving people who truly care, including you, about veterans and their healing. I listen to their stories, and Jonathan, you know, we have the Taya and Chris Kyle Foundation that works on marriages because 80% of service suicides are relationship related. And when we're talking about therapy, we recognize that there are different kinds of therapy for different people. I also know that, you know, if it were Dr. Mitchell doing all of the implementing and facilitating, I'd be super comfortable with it. With respect to you, Congressman, I think the VA does a horrible job with healthcare. I don't think they should be involved in it at all. I've gone to some VA facilities and seen the dog and pony show and been really excited, like, this one's good. And then I talked to veterans who actually go there, and it turns out what I've been told is not the case. You were on 42 medications. You know, Derek went to counseling. It doesn't work. And so when I look at all of that, I think, okay, so we need a private facility to facilitate. The reality is there are doctors who are going to abuse it. There are people that will have it that shouldn't have it. I just think we need to be careful.
I don't disagree with you. Yes, people will abuse it. And people abuse fentanyl and Dilaudid, and we can't do surgery without those. So for me, I grew up in the DARE generation where you had good drugs and bad drugs. Good drugs gave us the opiate epidemic. Bad drugs saved my life. So what we need to do is start looking at context. You know, taking a Percocet or morphine because you broke your leg in an ER under direct supervision is great. You know, not great, but because you broke your leg, but nobody's abusing them. And yes, I do believe that potential for abuse should absolutely be considered. I've never said, go do this and go to a rave.
Yeah, I hope you don't take it as I would say. I think you guys are the example. Like, this is what we want. When I listen to this group, I think I'm all for it. I also know there will be abuse of it. So it's like there are a lot of people who claim PTS who frankly don't have it. And it's rampant in the veteran community. And so it has to be individualized.
Well, that's the problem. We do have to really be rigorous in recognizing that this can be effective if there's proper therapeutic support around it and it's done in that way. Like, you did it 3 times, haven't touched it again in 9.5 years.
This is why I think when these compounds are FDA approved, I see no reason why therapy can't be a required part of the therapy, because this isn't just give somebody a pill. This isn't like cannabis where it's go do whatever you want. This is actual dosages. This is an actual medical protocol. And I do think medical cannabis confuses the subject because of how that was rolled out through the states rather than going through FDA, and which is why all the veterans who went and stood before legislators and bared their soul still don't have access at the VA, and they can't afford it. That's one of the big components of this is if this isn't done through the VA, how can veterans ever afford access?
The policy we're talking about is literally studying it. It's clinical trials. You know, it's baby steps here. I mean, it's $10 million just so the DoD can do clinical trials on active duty. The VA's come a long way. Some are good, some are bad. Well, I went blind because my retina detached from my injuries, and the VA is what saved me. So, you know, I don't. You can always improve, but you're only going to improve a bureaucratic institution so much. Let's be honest.
Well, that's the point. And I hear you about what people can afford, and I think that's important. I also want to be very clear. You know, the person who killed my husband and Chad, he claimed all the symptoms for PTS.
And he wasn't.
Psychiatrists on prosecution and defense testified he never had trauma in his life. He certainly didn't have PTS, but he was getting 100% disability from the VA.
Yeah.
So I think we have to, again, just accept the fact. I think there are great things that are abused that we still want to have, right? You know, car accidents, we still need our cars. I get it. I just think we need to be clear on this.
So the question is, how do we set up a regulated system of access that gets these therapeutics to the people that truly need them in a safe and effective way,
right,
and safeguard everybody else, right? That's the million-dollar question.
Of course.
That's right. And I don't know that it's possible to do that completely ever, but again, you know, we have to take a risk sometime.
And you're not allowed to say this as a politician. I say it because I am a wounded veteran. There's a massive overuse of the PTSD checkbox. Sleep apnea gets you 50% disability. You know how much a lost eye gets you? 30%. That's 30%, by the way.
Yeah, that's 40.
Yeah, you have to claim a few other things to get your full 100, and yet that's completely correct. That's probably a consequence of just rank dishonesty. I doubt those kind of people are even going to bother going to the therapy because they don't really need it.
I've got to add somebody to the conversation after the break. It's a guest that says, while he supports veterans, he's worried there could be a detrimental ripple effect if the FDA approves psychedelic therapy. If we'll add him to the conversation, we'll come back. Researchers say psychedelic drugs can potentially help cure PTSD, and they see this as an exciting and life-saving medical breakthrough. But it's important to be skeptical. Now, there's a difference between skeptical and cynical. Being cynical means you've already decided and judged. Being skeptical means being open-minded but cautious. Now, Frank Pegueros falls into that camp. He is the president and CEO of DARE. He also spent 26 years serving with the LAPD. Frank, you say you wholeheartedly support veterans and any treatment that has been approved and scientifically backed, but you have concerns here, so what are they?
Absolutely, our veterans need all the care that they've earned. The difficulty is a lot of the policy changes that are associated with decriminalization or legalization of substances, I don't think go far enough. They should include a rigorous prevention strategy, prevention education component, because you're taking substances that benefit people, but can harm people as well. There's probably not a member of this audience that hasn't benefited from some form of medication, but that medication could in fact be poison to another person. So you're introducing substances that are approved by the government. The perception of harm is reduced. So there is, in association with availability, there is the likelihood of increasing experimentation, misuse, and abuse of those substances.
But one, you mentioned decrim, which is something completely different. There's a big difference between doing mushrooms and going to a Fish concert and doing what I talked about. You know, the legislation Congressman Crenshaw got passed is about research and it's about medicine. And when we confuse medicine versus recreational use, you know, we shouldn't deny the people who need the medicine because people want to have fun with it.
But in some cases, the policy change is being driven by not research, but by public opinion. And it's a fine line.
And that's why decrim is not the solution here, but FDA approval, you know, adequate research, which is what we've been trying to fund.
Yeah.
And most of this research actually has not been government funded.
You're right. And the pharmaceutical companies have been the primary financier of research into this. They also stand to be the beneficiary financially.
Well, it's not the use, it's the abuse that we're saying is the downside, but that's not a reason to withhold it from people like you that need it. There just have to be safeguards put in place. Coming up, my final thoughts. The value of these psychedelics for those who have benefited is immeasurable. We have people here that I believe are alive today because of these psychedelics. And I'm thrilled they are helping people and have helped Jonathan, for example, reclaim his life. The bottom line is we are dealing with veterans that put themselves on the line for our country, and they've paid the price. We owe them every reasonable treatment option there is. We also owe them our commitment to make sure science can back it up. There are times when we want our government to protect us from forces that we can't control. That's why we have the military. And there are times when we want our government to protect us from false prophets and false products. And that is why we have regulations. If you've got a brother, a sister, an aunt, an uncle, or whatever, you don't want to watch this and say, oh, well, I need to get some MDMA and I can get them fixed up. That is not true. This has to occur within a therapeutic regimen administered by somebody that knows what they're doing. This is not a shortcut to fixing what's wrong. Don't take that away from this. This is done in a carefully prepared therapeutic paradigm. That's what you need to take away from this. With control, dosages are important, therapeutic support is important. Fair statement, Doctor?
Absolutely.
I want to thank all of my guests today. Taya has written a children's book, Prayers for Bears, that takes children on a journey, teaching them the importance of gratitude in all seasons of life. So give it a look. There's so much going on here right now, a new book, a new network, and a new season of Dr. Phil in Primetime. To keep up with it all, you can text me at 59627 or simply type PHIL, and we'll keep you posted every step of the way. We'll see you next time. Thanks so much.